The welcome of the welcome. Welcome to another game of What Do These All Have in Common? The audio to pause the show and on the screen look and see what they all have in common. So pause now. Hey, I see that you're still watching. Pause it. Hey, I'm glad you figured out what it was. Yes, they are all dinner. Oh, wait, that was the wrong week. My bad, my bad. They are all homes. Somebody lives in each and every one of these. Tree with the birds or the Chip and Dale live in a tree. Aye. Or, aye, the pirate. He'll be living on the boat, you know. Teepee. We even have Oscar the Grouch's place, eh? So all of these are people's homes. Even got a hobbit hole. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about homes. Home sweet home. What is a home? As you saw on that last page, housing is as varied as the stars in the sky. What you call home, I might call a trash can. What I call home, you might call heaven on earth. You never know. I always think it's interesting when you meet somebody new and you go to their house because you always try to vision what it is they're going to call home. The housing market is similar to the labor market in that not only does supply and demand affect it, but also a wide range of other factors. So if you watch the one about the labor market, talking about the housing market will be kind of similar. Um, and so let's look at some of the variances. Determined by the type of way it's occupied or owned. You have an owner occupied. That is where the person who owns the house actually lives in the house. Like I own my house, I live in my house. Okay, so that is an owner occupied house. I wish my house had a bedroom like this up here, though. That'd be pretty sweet. Anybody ever want to donate that to me? Feel free. Uh, Renter occupied. The person who lives in the house pays the owner to live there. Okay. Um, so if you rent an apartment or you rent a house or anything like that, anywhere where you're paying money uh, to stay in the property, but you were not paying towards owning it, that is renter occupied. You are renting it for however long you need it, or as long as the landlord will rent it to you. And the landlord is the person who is the owner of the rented property. And then there's a cooperative. It's housing in which that the owners are shareholders in a corporation that own the building. You see this more in like larger cities. They've had some TV shows. Like I can think of Park Avenue, was it 666 Park Avenue or something? One it got canceled. Uh, but you buy this room, this big apartment, this big house. Almost, I mean, it's like a big condo kind of, uh, and you buy into it, and it's owned by a group of people. And you have to buy to get into it. You have to follow specific rules and so forth. But you own a share into this corporation that owns the building, and you get an apartment out of it, or your home or lodging. Um, Enter ye and be welcome. All right. So you have single family home, which is not attached to any other houses, and it's intended for one family. Okay. You have an apartment building. They are renter-occupied units in a building owned by a landlord. Okay, the single-family home is your typical, normal, everyday house. Your apartment building, I'm pretty sure most of us have seen this. A townhouse is a house that's attached to other houses, usually in a long row. It can be as many as two, uh, or up to quite a few. And it's a house that's just kind of stuck side, right beside each other. And it's sometimes it's like a house that's split in two. Each has their own kitchen and their own bathrooms and bedrooms. Um, I have a friend who actually they own a townhouse. They live in one half and rent out the other half, and they use that to help pay for their housing. Um, so you have the townhouse and a condominium. It has two or more units that are individually owned and shared common parts that are jointly owned. Okay, so it has parts that like the lobby, in the parking, and so forth is all commonly owned, but you own your bedroom and bathroom and kitchen and so forth. That's a condominium. Uh, and again, these are something you see more in larger cities, whereas you see like single family homes more in smaller places, more rural country areas. And then you have apartment buildings and townhouses in both. Renting is not usually cheaper than, or is usually cheaper than buying. Okay, so whenever you pay rent, it is usually cheaper than buying. Uh, when you rent, you have nothing to show for it afterward, though. Okay, so whenever you're buying something, you have something to show for all the money you're putting in. But when you're renting it, you're just paying money out to stay there. Yeah, it's cheaper, but you're losing money and gaining nothing for it. Um, Because if you buy, you can always sell it if someone will buy it from you. Okay? And that's always a question is, okay, well, I did invest my money into this house, so I wasn't losing it, but now that I have it, will anybody buy it? When you buy, you take the chance of the property value going up or down. With the collapse of the housing market several years back now, houses became real cheap, and a lot of people owed more than their house was worth. And this is what's called being upside down on your house, owing more than it's worth. And so this led to the value going down. But things, if you bought it during the down period and things go up, well, then that works out good for you. Uh, Renting, you pay money to a landlord. Buying, you pay money to the bank or wherever you got your loan from. Okay. Buying is considered an investment, and in buying, you must keep up the property. Now, when you rent, usually your landlord keeps up the property, depending on your rental agreement and so forth. Some things that you have to take care of, but other things, if something major goes wrong with a house or something, the landlord usually will take care of that. Housing prices. Houses take time to build and take significant capital to produce. That's why houses are expensive. Since the supply takes time to increase, demand has a strong effect on the price. Okay, if there's a huge demand for houses, well, people are going to start charging more because there's not enough supply and it takes time to get that supply built up. Whereas if there's a bunch of houses on the market that nobody's buying, that means there's a lot of supply and the demand isn't very high, so the price is going to go down. Population plays a role as well because with the more people in an area, the greater the demand is going to be. The more people that live there, more people that need houses. Income of potential buyers also affects the price. What us that live here in Louisiana, housing is much cheaper than per se in California or New York. A friend of mine's brother used to buy houses in New York uh, years ago, and they would pay $700,000 for a house. And down here, that's a lot of money for a house. Over there, that's not ridiculous. Um, Demographics like marriage and children affect people's decision to buy or rent. People look at, well, are the schools good? People look at, are there nearby parks? What's the crime like? So things like that take into effect on their buying as well. Mortgage rates. Um, a mortgage is a loan given to pay for a house or other real estate. You take out a mortgage in order to pay for your house. The mortgage interest rate is the amount of interest charged on your home loan. Usually it's done in 15 or 30-year periods. Okay, those are the normal rescheduled payments that you either pay it all over 15 or 30 years. Every little percentage point counts over this amount of money and time, because this adds up. If you're paying, every little bit of interest, 1% interest on $100,000 over 30 years is a lot of money. So, you want to try to get as low as interest on it as possible. Higher interest uh, equals less demand for homes. So when interest rates are high, and that's why they lowered when the whole housing debacle happened, all the loan rates, the mortgage rates went way down in order to get people to try to buy some of these homes that were out there. You know, uh, so they weren't charging us arms and legs for our mortgage. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? It's a great show if you've never seen it. Geography plays a huge part in the type of housing available. Uh, and I've mentioned several times about things that you would find in a big city versus things you would find in the country. And it's called urban. Urban is a city or densely populated area. Rural is the country or sparsely populated area. And some people who live out in the country, even your city is considered rural because there's not a whole lot of people there. Population density, the number of people living in an area. These offer various pricings, lifestyles, and cultures altogether. Each has their own advantage and disadvantages. If you live out in the country, you could have a big, wide, spacious house with a big yard. If you live in the city, you're probably going to live in a compact apartment somewhere. And you're going to pay a lot more because space is at a premium in big cities, whereas, space is very abundant out in the rural areas. The burbs, suburbs, primarily residential areas outside but near a major city. Exurbs, rural residential communities further from cities than suburbs. And a lot of times your exurbs turn into your suburbs. As the suburbs spread out, they spread out into these exurbs, and they turn into suburbs, and people move further out, so they're outside of the city and have a little more area. And you can see, like in some of the suburbs, this is a suburb down here, and you see how closely packed all of this is in. Zoning laws, regulations on how land in certain areas can be. They can tell you you can use this land to build a residential home, or you can only use this land to build a business. Suburbs tend to be cookie cutter and may have local rules and regulations about your home. And you see how all these look very much the same. And a lot of times they tell you, oh, I remember this military veteran there that somebody had a big deal because he was hanging a huge American flag out in his yard, and they were trying to cause him all these legal problems and stuff because he was breaking the rules and regulations. And it's like, how are you going to tell somebody who served for our country that they cannot fly an American flag? Get over yourselves. But that's what happens in these suburbs. So that's why you'll never find me living in a suburb, but that might be a place for you. Urban renewal. Revitalization of an old and undesirable area of the city. And this has become a cool, popular thing to happen, is to uh, renew a lot of these urban areas and make them, make these cool, lofty places and so forth. And where would you live and why? Write down in the comments, hey, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live and what kind of house would you have? Until next time, deuces!